Okay, watch what you say now. So, what's going on? How's everybody? Got any questions for me about any old thing? Okay, Pia.
Bruce, I wonder, when life happens and there is not a lot of time and whatever, and I know I'm very vigilant with my practice, but there has just not been enough hours in the day to actually take out and sit. How do you cope with that when you have to take time out and just life at the moment, it's not possible? How do you deal with that?
You got to roll with the circumstances, I mean, there's times when I'm super busy and times when I'm not, and I try to squeeze it in if I can, and if I can't, then I just wait till I can, and I don't really sweat it too much.
Good.
Obviously moving from one place to another, I've done that numerous times in my life, and it's packing everything up and moving it and taking care of all the paperwork and moving in and unpacking and trying to figure out your new neighborhood, and I mean, all of it. So I wouldn't worry about it. I mean, the other thing is that is part of practice as well. Of just like dealing with whatever's happening in the moment while you're packing and moving and getting settled in. I mean, what and the part of that that's practice is just the how are you handling everything? Are you freaking out about it, or are you just kind of doing what's necessary and being okay with it?
And that's the way I look at it, because to me, Zen practice is not just sitting, it's every minute of the day being present and dealing with what comes up and responding to the situation. And this is really what I've done in all this.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, like, that's just what I've done. But yeah.
I mean, meditation.
Pardon?
Meditation isn't the only practice, and in a way, it's it's just a skillful means to sort of lay the groundwork for having an opening experience, Kensho, as it were. And but once you kind of see through your conceptual thinking, then it really is just life, day by day, moment by moment. And I think we all struggle and have struggled, and which is why we're in this practice, with the vicissitudes, is that it? The vicissitudes of life. It's the ups and downs, right? And do we get caught up in feeling good or bad about it, that, or feeling angry or selfish, or just not just letting your conceptual thoughts about what's happening in your life sort of rule the day rather than you ruling the day. So so that's why we do things like meditation or big mind or chanting or bowing, or all these different practices. There's so many what we call practices, and those are all just means to an end, but of course there's no end. But that's a whole nother topic of Zen. I mean, actually, I read something today that I actually brought to class that might shed some light on this. And I've got a book called Zen Keys by Thich Nhat Hanh. You can see it right here. This book was published in 1973 by Thich Nhat Hanh, who is a legit, for real Zen master, or was. He died recently. And this is his guide to Zen practice, and it's really great. It's one I would recommend for anybody, whether you're new or been at it for a while. And in one of the chapters he calls the language of Zen, he talks a little bit about how Zen masters are basically, what they are is teaching Buddhists, right? And just because you're not teaching doesn't mean you're not a Buddha, and you may be doing something else. But teaching Buddhists are Zen, are Zen masters, and so they have to, because they're here in a sort of bodhisattva role to bring people along and help them awaken. They have to meet people where they are, and so they kind of get to know you, and especially in the monastery, they get to know you pretty quickly, of your temperament and your things like that, and they use whatever skillful means at their disposal to help. And that can be everything from just teaching, explaining things, to doing koans, or sometimes, smacking the person with a stick, or pouring water on their head, or, doing whatever they can to kind of shock the person into dropping their conceptual thoughts and seeing, the Buddha way. And the teaching aspect of it, vocal, like giving lectures, or teishos, as we call them in Japanese Zen, they have to use language, right? You can't really speak without language. And so they try to put it as artfully as they can, but they're still dealing in the world of concepts, and notions and ideas and things like that. And so because they're using dualistic language and concepts to teach with, they have to try to do it as artfully as they possibly can. And it's difficult. It's very difficult, because it's a difficult subject. We're speaking about sort of thing, or not sort of, but things that, cannot be explained really. And so they use a lot of poetic imagery. They use stories. They use what I call logic trails, where they take you through some logical steps, right off the cliff at the end, right? The most famous one that way was a fellow named Nagarjuna. And he had these 4 propositions that you would take an idea, and he would run them through these 4 propositions. And by the end, you don't have that idea anymore. It's a very interesting process. If you want to see that, I maybe talk about it in another class, but the Nagarjuna's 4 propositions. And he also had another thing. It's a book you can buy, by the way, called Nagarjuna's 100 Negations, where he sort of systematically and methodically tears apart any kind of conceptual notion that you might have that you're attached to. So for people who like to do that kind of thing, it's quite effective. But I found that, over the years, different things for me have had various different effectiveness. And so I switch around. But getting back to Thich Nhat Hanh's book, he here, and I'll read it to you. This is a koan. This is a famous koan. And it's a dialogue between Joshu, very, very famous Zen master, and Nansen, who was Joshu's teacher, who was also a very famous Zen master. And this is a koan they did with each other. So Joshu, being the student, starts out and he asks kind of a classic Zen question. He says, "What is the way?" You know, we talk about the way often. And Nansen just says, "It's your everyday mind." And Joshu's probably going, "Well, not sure what that means exactly, right?" So Joshu says, "Well, is it necessary to realize it, your everyday mind?" And Nansen says, "To intend to realize the way is opposed to the way." So he's really putting Nansen in a box here, or Joshu in a box, because first there's this thing called the way that they're all trying to get to. And Joshu said, you know, should I realize it? And Nansen said to intend to realize it is actually opposing it. So that puts him, you know, in a position of like, well, how can I do my Zen practice if doing my Zen practice is actually preventing me from realizing the way? Which is basically what Nansen is telling him. So that's a bit of a conundrum. So after Nansen says to intend to realize the way as opposed to the way, Joshu says, naturally, he says, "Without intending, how can you know whether it is the way?" And Nansen says, "The way does not depend on what you know or do not know. If you know it, your knowledge is just speculative ideas. If you don't, your ignorance is just inanimate. When you have no doubts, the unlimited universe will open in front of you and no discrimination is possible." So he basically keeps steering Joshu to the fact that your aspiration is in your way. The way is just there. It needs no realizing. It needs no aspiration. It needs no practice. It needs no study. Just open your eyes. It's right in front of you. You're walking on it. You are it. Everything else is it. And just see it. Okay. Well, easier said than done, because, you know, when I'm doing my stuff around the house here, you know, I am, well, at the end, he says, no discrimination is possible. So that discriminating awareness, you know, is where we say, oh, that's a phone, and that's a cup of coffee, and that's my wife, and that's my guitar, and this is my house, and, you know, my, right? And all those things are just phenomena. Okay. They just are objects that are not really objects. They're manifestations of the way. So everything we are and everything we see and everything we hear and taste and touch and everything is just temporary manifestations of the way. And so, of course, are we. We think of ourselves, though, as an individual separate thing. And I think of my coffee and my phone and my guitar and my wife and everything as separate things. So how can I just see it not discriminating between things, but see it all as one thing? And not only is it all one thing, it is, I am also that one thing. Okay. So non-discriminating awareness is not making objects out of thing and then placing a value on those things or judging those things. Okay, it's seeing everything as one. So it's a bit of a hurdle because you can only see it if you're not really thinking about it that way. Well, how do you stop thinking about it that way? Well, then now we get back to, well, if you sit in meditation and you sit very, very still and you sit there long enough and relax enough, relax, 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 let go, let go, let go, your mind will suddenly stop moving. And then that's what he means by the unlimited universe will open in front of your eyes, because you will suddenly see for real, everything is one. Okay. Now, it doesn't mean that I can use my coffee cup for a phone because it's the same as my, see what I mean? So it doesn't mean that these objects around us don't still function the same way they do. You just see them from this other angle. Okay, I still know how to make a cup of coffee. I still know how to work my phone. I still know how to play my guitar. I don't grab my phone and strum on it thinking it's a guitar because I see it all as one. So are you following me so far? Everybody? Okay. So as a follow-up, koan, after that, this is maybe sometime later, when Joshu is a teacher and a student comes to him and the student asks another kind of typical classic Zen question, which is, what was Bodhidharma's intention in coming to China? And the student is obviously looking for wanting the teacher to explain to him, well, he came to China to teach Zen and yada yada, and go on this long story. But the teacher, Joshu, being the great Zen master that he is, isn't going to be trapped or sucked into that kind of thing. He's going to point directly to the point, or to this non-discriminating awareness. So the student says, what was Bodhidharma's intention in coming to China? And Joshu said, look at the oak tree in the garden. Now, that isn't a normal answer to a question, right? But the guy's asking a sort of intellectual question that's not really related to anything that's going to ever help him out with awakening or seeing. So Joshu says, look at the oak tree in the garden. Now, why would he say that? Well, first of all, to sort of shock the guy out of his conceptualizing about things, or maybe as a woman, I don't know. And pointing directly to the way, and he can point to that tree, and there it is. There's nature. There is Buddha nature. There is oneness manifesting as a tree. Okay, so it's a little bit of shock tactics that are used sometimes to boot people off of conceptual thinking, and then pointing to something and maybe the guy looked at the tree and went, oh my God, that is, I'm one with that tree. Everything's the same. It doesn't mean that's not a tree or that I'm not me, but there's no separation. There's no discrimination happening. And that's an awakening view. And many millions of people have had these experiences. You yourselves have probably had these experiences and maybe didn't really understand it or know really what happened, but there's probably moments in your life and all of our lives where we just don't need to think and we just kind of stop. And maybe we just happen to be sitting on a park bench somewhere and we just feel that connection all of a sudden, and this oftentimes happens when people are relaxed enough and not caught up in their day-to-day life, conceptualizing and intellectualizing it, they just sort of drop all that and they're just there in the moment. It might just be for a flash. It might be for a few seconds. It might be for a few minutes, it might be longer. And those are sort of, accidental awakenings, I would say. But in Zen, the reason we have these practices is because we want to have a purposeful awakening, right? We're not going to wait for it to accidentally happen. We're going to try to make it happen. But that's a trap as well. Just like Joshu pointed out, or Nansen pointed out to Joshu in that first koan, to intend to realize the way is opposed to the way. So oftentimes when we sit down in meditation, we think, okay, this is the time I'm going to get there, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to, stare at the wall and I'm going to force my thoughts away and I'm going to really try to get enlightened, and all those intentions and all those struggling and pushing against it, it makes it impossible, because the more you try to resist your thoughts, or the more you effort towards this, you're just not going to get there. You put up your own wall. So this is why Roshi says, you have to relax it away. You relax it away, your conceptual thoughts. And you can physically feel your body relax, right? And you can tell when your mind is relaxing, and the body and the mind, of course, are one thing and affect each other intimately. And so in our meditation, the proper meditation instruction is sit there with no goal. Sit there and do nothing. Okay. Just go ahead and sit, but do nothing. And if thoughts arise, just keep relaxing, and if don't chase them. Somebody told me once, it's like when a train is coming through the station, like a thought is coming through your mind, don't get on the train, just let the train pass. Okay. Don't chase your thoughts, don't engage them, just keep relaxing it away. And that is an art of its own, but you can feel when you're getting better at it. And that's why, we recommend, if you're going to be doing meditation, to do it regularly enough and long enough on each sitting to allow that to take place. Because it does take a little while for the mind and the body to relax and settle down. And part of it is just even getting comfortable in your posture, and making sure you have a posture that's conducive and helpful for that. And so that posture is usually sitting upright, okay, and being comfortable enough, but sitting upright so you're not going to fall forward or fall backward, but not sitting there holding stiff, right? But finding a balance point. Like, when I sit there and I kind of do this a little bit when I first sit down, and I kind of rock forward and backward, and all of a sudden I'll find this sort of spot where they're in balance, and then I just sit there and I just stay that way. And so if your back muscles are tight or your stomach muscles are tight, you haven't quite got it yet. One of the things I make sure for me is that my knees are lower to the ground than my hips. Just with my body, that's the way that I can actually sit upright and balance on my spine, and pull my chin in a little bit. And you kind of have to find your own way there, but I've found that the knees below the hips really, if your knees are too high, you'll hunch over, and then you'll try to use your back to raise up, and then you're just struggling there and getting frustrated and not comfortable. But once you find a really good balanced meditation posture, then the real work begins, which is just, okay, now I'm balanced. Now I don't have to worry about my body. And, you can kind of just look down at the ground, or, some people close their eyes a little bit or all the way, whatever works. And then you can, if you're not worrying about your body, then your mind will slowly start to slow down, and thoughts will still come through, but then the practice is to just not cling, don't cling to anything, just let them pass through. It's like clouds going through the open sky, the clouds are going to pass through, but the open sky is your mind. And just let those things pass through. They're temporary, impermanent. Okay. And then one of the times, you'll completely forget that you even have a body in a way, because you're so comfortable and balanced that, you're not really having much for bodily sensations. And then your mind will just all of a sudden stop thinking, and the universe will open up before you. And it may or may not be very dramatic. Sometimes the first times that happens, it's kind of stunning, and the shock of it will make your mind start going again. And that's why it'll only last a short while, but you'll know for sure, okay, that was it. And then you'll want to, like, okay, I'm going to go back and do that again and again, and then you're fighting it. Then you're trying to force it again. You can't force it. You have to completely relinquish, let go. You cannot interfere in a way. Okay. And what he means by the universe opening up to you, you just suddenly see everything as one thing. And can be pretty amazing. Now, later on, when you are more practiced, you can kind of slip in and out of that kind of at will. But what happens is when you suddenly see things from what we call the absolute perspective, or you see the absolute, or you see the oneness, then the wisdom that comes from that has to do with, suddenly you see that all your thinking mind and all the conceptualizing and all your attachments to all of that are just very flimsy and not nearly as powerful and as have such a hold on you. And you also realize that those aren't things that you want to reject, that suddenly you see that these are things that you can use and function with, and not really be attached to. It's what we call it liberation. You're liberated from your conceptual mind running your life. You're running the conceptual mind. So it's not something to just throw away or never have again. But you see it from this other perspective, which this is the wisdom that they talk about. And you may see into oneness, you may see into impermanence, you may see more clearly into dependent arising, you may see more clearly into and by saying it's a concept, but all these are concepts when I say them, but emptiness, okay? And that emptiness just means that everything's impermanent and has no permanent and abiding or intrinsic self or permanence, including yourself. It's not just you see the whole world around you and you're still separate, right? You have to, you see this deeply as your own life is exactly the same as these clouds floating through your mind. And you come and go too. But, so Zen teachers will go to great lengths with serious students to help them. And it might be just to tell them to meditate more. It might be to tell them, you know, you should do some koans, because some of these koans can sort of shock you into that area. That's a lot of their intent. They may, when you ask a dumb question, they may just throw you out of the room, you know, or they may say something that seems so out of left field. Like if you say, well, why did Bodhidharma come and teach? And they say, look at the cypress tree in the garden. It comes so out of left field, it just knocks those concepts out of the picture. And you may have a flash of awakening there. The koans are filled with those kind of events. And you shouldn't think that these are people who just walked in off the street and asked a question like that and then got enlightened. These are oftentimes people who've been practicing for a long time, who are still have some question inside, some doubt, some conceptual thing they're still clinging to, and they have access to a master to bring up their question, and then the master deals with it. However, you know, it's hard to predict. And, you know, Roshi's done this to me numerous times when I've come to him for, what about where it says such and such and such? And, you know, he'll just go, Bruce, go drink some tea, you know, or just drop that shit, you know, too conceptual. Every once in a while, he'll call me, he'll see me talking in one of these videos, and he'll call me and go, man, you were so far off. And I go, where, what did I? And he said, I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm like, then I'm really screwed up, right? I'm like, what did he see that I, you know? And I'll go watch the video and like try to figure it out and stuff. And I don't know, he screws around with me fairly often, but I know his intent. His intent, you know, is he wants me to see things, and he wants me to be able to express them and to help teach. And you know, so sometimes when my feelings have gotten hurt, which they have, you know, I have to look into that. Why did that hurt my feelings, you know? And that's where I maybe use a little big mind on myself. Go, okay, what part of my ego am I still holding on to where this hurt my feelings? And I couldn't take it as like really helpful criticism that will help me, you know. Instead, I'm going to defend my view or defend my performance or whatever. And by doing that, I'm letting my concepts run me, right? Run my life, instead of being really, really open to how I can be better at that particular thing. Well, that was a long-winded speech, but I hope that made some sense. So any other questions or comments about any of that? Yeah, Steven.
I was thinking when you were talking about seeing things as one, I've been reading some quantum physics, quantum mechanics books, and in particular, one theory is biocentrics. It's basically the world that you are creating your own world. You're entangling with other particles, so you're, in essence, physics is even kind of saying you are one. You're basically your world. And that ties into a lot of different things I've read with Buddhism as well. It seems to really be connected, and that helped me see it a little differently.
Mm-hmm.
That helped me a lot in terms of finding beauty in things. That's helped me.
Yeah. No, I know. You know, physics is interesting, and science, you know, is getting very, very close to some of these things. One thing I would distinguish though is, yeah, it's not that hard to see the physical world, the entire universe, as one thing, because, you know, we can see pretty clearly that, you know, atoms, you know, there's a certain amount of elements, right? 115 or so elements in the periodic table, and that these elements, you know, are made up of atoms, and those atoms can come together and make molecules, and molecules can make, you know, compounds, and life somehow sprang from that. And, you know, and I think, yeah, but the one thing that Zen, and I don't think science can ever get to this because they don't really think about it, is, and Huang Po puts this very clearly. He said, everything is just the one mind outside of which nothing exists. So what he's pointing to is the empty space that holds all this physical stuff. Okay, science, physics is concerned with tangible sort of things, you know, atoms and subatomic particles and molecules, and how all that works and how it all comes together and changes. And I think, you know, as a Buddhist, you can kind of go, yeah, well, yeah, you're right, you know, physics, right on, you know, this world is manifesting, nature manifests an astounding array of creatures and minerals and everything else. But what is the empty space that holds all that? Okay, like I said about the blue sky, the clouds float through the blue sky, but what's the blue sky? Right? And we think, yeah, you know, if you, for all these things, all these physical particles, and you know, and even light as particles, and, you know, all that, and waves, those things are contained within a vacuum, you might say. And if you took all the physical stuff out, there's still something left, right? Because so Zen in a way is more concerned with that, because that is what we might say is one mind, is mind. Okay, now that's a conceptual way of putting it, but we can get, as humans, you know, very much caught up in explaining everything by the physical world, but that's not the whole picture. And it's really great and interesting and true, but we need to go a step further. So your mind, what is mind? What is it? You know, what is this thing that holds these thoughts? What is that thing? And, you know, we say, well, that's your true self, or that's consciousness, or that is awareness, or we have all these words, right? And those words are concepts also, but they're helpful, they're useful to kind of parse these things out and maybe refocus to a different view or a different area. But what is mind? You know, right in that koan, he said, wait, what did he say? The very first line. See, oh, I lost my bookmark. Oh, so Joshu says, what is the way? And Nansen says, it's our everyday mind. It's your everyday mind. So Joshu kind of misses that point in a way, because then he says, well, is it necessary to realize it? And Nansen is saying, well, to try to realize it as opposed to it. So he's kind of showing Joshu that he's kind of off the mark right off the bat. What Joshu should have said is, maybe then, is what is mind? What is mind? That it can hold these things, that everything generates from this empty space we call mind, from this background, or this well, they could sometimes, they have all sorts of words for it. They call it the womb of the Tathagata, which is the where did the Buddhas come from? From the womb of light, of enlightenment. So this is the part of Zen that sets it apart from, I think, every other kind of study. Is most of the time we're worried about the physical world. And is this other thing a world? No, but the whole world is contained in it. The whole world has somehow sprung from it. Like, I can't imagine there was a big bang and there was nothing around it to big bang into. I know there's some theories about that, but I'm not going to get into that because I don't buy it. And it's just more conceptualizing. But it comes back to, another thing is, like, don't worry about the universe. Find out what your own mind is. What is it that thinks? What is this thing that it smells and tastes? What is this thing that can speak? What is this thing that can hold thoughts? What is it? And, from a Zen side, they'll often say, well, who am I? Which is the same question. Who am I really? If I'm not my thoughts, and I'm not a permanent physical thing, like a body, and even if you believe there's a soul, does the soul exist within this mind? And does it really exist, or is it also impermanent? And is mind permanent, or is mind, unborn, undying, as we say in Buddhism? But, and I get the attraction to figuring out the physical world, because that's the thing that's kind of most immediately in front of us, and we taste it and touch it and smell it and live in it, and we are it, and it is all one thing. But what is mind that can comprehend even that?
One theory I read that was really good is it's the many worlds theory. It's basically it's like life is like a trunk of a tree, and you're on one branch, and so everything has an opposite reaction. So if they were saying that if that's the case, there is no death, basically. It's just you're continuing on in another branch, and you just don't know it because you can't see both sides. You're only seeing one part.
Yeah, actually, I think you can know it, but not in a knowing way that's conceptual. You can experience it. And again, these are all concepts. These are all, can you get below concepts or above concepts, however you want to put it? And concepts are also part of this oneness, but it's a distraction. It's just one side of the coin, as we say. So what is the thing that thinks concepts? What is it that conceptualizes? Okay, that's your homework assignment. This is my last class of this particular series. And this coming weekend, the 12th and 13th, as you may already know, Genpo Roshi will be doing Saturday and Sunday retreat that he calls the gift of no fear. And the reason he's calling it that is because it's oftentimes fear that keeps us from dropping our concepts, or it's fear of, losing who I am, sort of, or, and losing an identity, a separate self-identity that we all have, and so I think it's a very, very helpful workshop that way. And, thinking about it, maybe for the next couple of days, you might really think about, what am I really afraid of? And not just like big ugly spiders or getting robbed on the street. What am I afraid of about looking inward? What am I afraid that I'm going to see, or that I'm going to lose, or whatever, So this would be a great weekend for Roshi to help you work on that. And one of the things that I think you can trust is that Thich Nhat Hanh and Genpo Roshi and the Dalai Lama and the Buddha didn't become useless, pathetic, crazy people after seeing these things we're talking about. Okay. And I think for a lot of people, their fear is, well, my life's going to go to shit and I won't be able to keep a job, or, but look and see what your real fear is. Maybe your fear is being exposed. Maybe your fear is being honest. Maybe your fear is just being on Zoom with a bunch of people asking these questions. It could be a lot of different things. Who knows? But it's definitely something that we should look into. Right? Fear of going crazy, or fear of losing control. The whole time that we're telling you, stop trying to control everything. Don't try to control your thoughts. You can't whip your thoughts into thinking your way to enlightenment. It just doesn't, you can't control it that way. You just have to relax and let them go, and they'll go away peacefully. They're not going to fight. They're not going to fight you if you just relax and let them go. And you will think again after that, but in a much more enlightened way. Jane?
I actually just have a question.
Yeah.
Is Roshi's Hawaii property okay? I mean,
Oh, you mean from
wasn't
the fire?
affected by the fire? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I talked to him this morning. He just got there yesterday. Actually, I talked to him yesterday too, but yeah, he's fine. He's on the Big Island, and there are a couple fires on the Big Island, but they're way up on the volcanoes.
Hmm.
And one of them is down kind of near a highway that nobody lives out there. It's all kind of lava fields and brush and stuff like that. And the brush is, kind of a brush fire. And I think they closed the highway that goes from Kona to the east side of the island to can't remember the name of the town over there. But yeah, they're okay there. On the other hand, if you've seen pictures of Lahaina, which is on Maui, you know, it's burned, the downtown is burned to the ground. There's nothing left. There's cars lined up and down the block that are all burned out. And I've been to Lahaina numerous times, and it was such a quaint, great little town. It was used to be the capital of Lahaina was the capital of the Hawaiian Empire before white people got there. And that's where King Kamehameha was, and all these, different kings. And there was an enormous banyan tree right in a park right at the south end of the downtown of Lahaina. And it must have covered half an acre. These banyan trees just go out and out and out, and it's an enormous thing, and it's gone. It's burned down. It's really sad. So I'm really feeling for the people of Maui right now, particularly around that Lahaina area. But yeah, Roshi's fine, and his house is in kind of a wet, jungly kind of area anyway. So I don't know if anything could really burn where he is. The houses are very far apart, and it's just kind of banana trees and avocado trees and vines and a lot of frogs. Yeah. Anything else, Jane?
No, I mean, living where I do, I can certainly, we're very vulnerable to grass fire where I am, and I'm well aware that my entire town could burn down, and that could happen in a lot of places in Colorado. And so climate change is definitely something that, I live with every day. I've seen so many changes, and there's a lot of grief around it, but also because of the practice and all of that, I feel like I have sort of a cosmic perspective on it as well. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Colorado was burned down a million times in the last, million years. And keeps coming back. But we're very much concerned about ourselves, right? You don't want your town burning around you, and your house burning down and dying and all that. I mean, yeah, I get it.
And I
Like,
think I've spent a great deal of time out in nature, and an enormous amount of time. So, I mean, I am attached to the plants and the animals, and I've spent years with them, and so I feel some sadness about that.
Yeah, but you must feel joy when the new ones come up too, right? Which they always do.
No, I'm in total awe. I mean, I'm instantly aligned with the absolute when I'm outdoors. It just happens instantaneously.
Yeah, good.
And, like today, being up, hiking up to this lake around 12,000 feet, and sitting there and just in total awe. I mean, the ego just drops completely at moments like that.
It's
And
easier when there's no people around to threaten the ego. I mean,
yeah, yeah, there's nothing. Well, I
isn't
guess
it?
you could be threatened by the weather or whatever, but
Well, yeah,
um,
or your concepts about the weather, I mean, the
yeah.
weather right when you're sitting there might be just fine, but you can still make up
Mhm.
you can still be worried about it. But,
But
can you take it into the city? Can you take your equanimity of your practice into the city and function there?
some of the time, but not like I can out in the, it's not as easy. It's not as,
Yeah.
it's effortless, in the circumstance I described like today.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Well, sometimes we have to put that to the test,
mhm,
and just see how centered we are that way.
yeah.
It's hard. It's super hard. I get it. Okay. Thanks, Jane.
Thank
Uh,
you.
Pia, did you have something else?
If I could just ask, and I'm so sorry you have had all these fires. I know what it's like. We have them in Australia too. Has Roshi, have they moved to Hawaii now permanently, or?
No, he's there. Charlotte Jigen is in Oregon at their house there, and she's going to be there for a while. And then I think I don't know, she was going to go back to Copenhagen, and then she was going to go to Holland or something, but I don't know. Her schedule changes a lot, so I don't really know. The only thing I know for sure is she's in Oregon and he's in Hawaii right now. I'm not sure how. I think Roshi will be in Hawaii for a while now. He's probably there for the rest of the winter, or until next spring. And she'll either be in Oregon or Europe.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for today.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll be there Saturday. I won't be there Sunday because I'm finally going to take a little vacation with my family. Like summer's almost over, but my wife and daughter and I are gonna drive east over to a town called Vernal, which is almost to Colorado. And it's famous because they found tons of dinosaur fossils there over the years. And there's a big museum, and there's a place where you can go and watch people, digging out fossils, and you can go on tours, and it's just kind of a 4-day. We're going to be gone 4 days only, so I won't be here for the Sunday, but Mark will take over for me Sunday, and then Roshi has kind of one of his Kensho retreat things is happening starting Monday, but there will be a Tuesday and Thursday thing next week with Mark or Mary Ellen. I'm not sure, but I'm gonna just get away from it for a few days and wander around in eastern Utah.
So do that, yeah.
Yeah, I need a break once in a while too.
So Bruce, you're going to leave your Zen behind, right?
No, I can't leave it or take it.
Maybe you just travel a little later.
It's actually not leavable or takeable.
That's a good answer.
Good
But
answer.
you get it? Okay.
I'm in the process. Well, anyway, no, we don't need me to start right now. That's good. You're going on vacation. I'm happy about that. It's all good.
Have a good time.
Okay, yeah, thanks so much. And so nice to see you guys. I really appreciate it when you come and we get a chance to talk and kick things around a little bit. And yeah, please come to Roshi's thing Saturday and Sunday. He's just in such a great mood right now. And he's just excited to see everybody all the time. So
cool. Well, pleasant dreams, everybody. Thank you, Bruce. And,
thanks.
And
Thank you.
Good night.
Pia and everybody.
Jane, Stephen, Belinda, Sam, Pia.
Yeah.
Bye.
Beautiful. Bye. Bye-bye. Thank you.